County Executive, who's here, Council Vice President Gabe Alvarez, and Councilmember Evan Glass, and some other great community leaders who you'll hear from shortly. This is an exciting day. Montgomery County is a great place, and we're a great community for a lot of reasons. We do a lot of things well, but I think one of our most redeeming qualities is that we care about one another. We believe that every one of our more than 1 million residents should have the basic necessities of life: food, access to a safe and affordable home, a great school, a job that pays a living wage, and that in the twilight of their life that they'll be able to retire with dignity. We believe that families should be able to provide and take care of their loved ones when they're sick, and that they should be able to achieve the maximum extent of their God-given potential. The historic public-private partnership that we're announcing today to create a guaranteed income pilot here in Montgomery County is an investment, yes, an investment in our residents, and it's a collective demonstration of the vision and our priorities and beliefs that we have. Now we know we have more work to do to achieve that vision, that there is extreme income and wealth inequality across the country and here in Montgomery County. Prior to the pandemic, 40% of Americans could not afford an unexpected expense of just $400. Nearly half of our renters today in Montgomery County are paying more than 30%, sometimes much more, of their monthly income on housing. I was in Rick Cheney just 2 or 3 weeks ago. And met a young woman named Katia and her son, Miguel. And they were telling me that they were in danger of losing their 2-bedroom apartment because their rent was increased by $70. Thankfully, she was resourceful. She was able to negotiate a 2-bedroom down to a 1-bedroom and lower her rent and stay in the community that her son was thriving in his school, where he had his friends and where she had support. You think about that, $70 a month was going to potentially force Katia to move out of her neighborhood, or in the worst case scenario, be homeless. We have people making decisions like that in this county every day. And right now we're in a national moment that requires new thinking about how we effectively support our low-income residents and individuals whose income has been drastically reduced due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Research on guaranteed income across the nation has shown measurable improvements in the participants' financial stability. They're using their funds to create long-term economic benefits, like going to community college to improve their job skills, buying a car to have access to a higher-paying job that may not be accessible via transit, or eliminating old debt that would otherwise trap a family in a cycle of poverty. Each of us makes difficult financial decisions every day. Guaranteed income programs are aimed at empowering families and individuals to make the decisions that work best for them. When your basic needs are met, you can make more strategic decisions. When you're in financial distress or crisis, you make short-term rather than long-term decisions. And that has a lasting impact, not only on those families, but on all of us here in the county. So I'm really proud that Montgomery County will be the first jurisdiction in the state of Maryland to announce a guaranteed income pilot, and we'll have one of the larger, more robust programs that will be evaluated in the region and in the nation. And I'll briefly tell you about the program before turning it over to my really good friend and colleague, who I partnered on this with, Councilmember Vice President Gabe Alvarez. Just the quick specifics. Families will have 300 households that will receive $800 a month for 24 months. This is a partnership with the county government, the county executive who you'll hear from momentarily, our Department of Health and Human Services, the Meyer Foundation, who made a generous gift of $1 million to support Up Together, who is the nonprofit partner who will administer the fund and support families with their social networking collaboration framework, and the Collaboration Council for Children, Youth, and Families, who you'll hear from shortly as well. And we have other partners here as well, including Impact Silver Spring. The program will be evaluated with a great team in partnership with the Universities of Shady Grove, led by Ann Kademian, our executive director there. And they're going to pull researchers from all the great University of Maryland systems to evaluate this program over the next 2 years. So with that, we have a general framework on the 300 residents, and that 100 will be dealing or in the continuum of care dealing with homelessness. But we're going to work in a community engagement process over the next several months to narrow down and decide on exactly who the 300 households are. So we'll take more questions about that at the appropriate time. But with that, I want to bring up my partner in this effort, Council Vice President Gabe Abernaz, who is the chair of our Health and Human Services Committee as well, for him to make remarks about the program in addition. Gabe.
Well, thank you so much, Will. What an honor to be with all of you today. This represents a momentous occasion, a paradigm shift in how we think about addressing the holistic needs of our families and strengthening our social safety net here in Montgomery County. We are blessed and fortunate to have one of the greatest Department of Health and Human Services, and in my opinion, county governments in general, that tries to meet residents where they are, provide services that are culturally appropriate and holistic in their own right, and partners with our nonprofit sector and our private sector to try as best we can to have as tight a safety net as possible to prevent families from going into crisis. But as Will mentioned, we know there continues to be a lot of need here in Montgomery County, and that need has only grown over the last 2 years. Prior to the pandemic, there were more than 40,000 children under the age of 16 that were food insecure, which basically means they didn't know where their next meal was going to come from. We also know that, as Will mentioned as well, the disparities that we're seeing in access to housing have also been particularly pronounced. And at the height of the pandemic, more than 270,000 county residents filed for unemployment, many of them still trying to figure out their way. The resilience that our families have shown these last 2 years is nothing short of extraordinary, but they need help. They need our support. We must trust their ability to make their own decisions on what is best for their families. And that doesn't mean replacing the direct services that we provide in a myriad of other issues. It means complementing those services. And these $800 can make the difference between paying rent or not, between having food on the table or not, but also potentially whether or not a young person can participate in an after-school program or engage in college access and readiness programs that can improve their families. We've seen time and time again that investments like this really make a difference. And this is a national movement that has been done in other jurisdictions quite successfully. And although we're the first in the state of Maryland, there are already conversations going on underway among other jurisdictions considering a similar strategy. And I'll also note two last things before turning it over back to Will to introduce the county executive. If not for the federal government and the investment of support that they have provided to all of us, whether it's a child tax credit, whether it's a direct stimulus payment that so many hundreds of millions of residents across the country were able to benefit from, that is what kept families in place. That is what kept our economy moving. That kept us from falling over a cliff. And so this investment at the local level expands on what we know works. Many of us, including my own family, are beneficiaries of the child tax credit that the federal government is providing right now. For a family of four, I can tell you, it's helping us. And we're not struggling in the way so many other families are. So this really is a momentous occasion. It represents a paradigm shift in innovation. And I want to thank our partners, and in particular, Pam from Will's office. I want to thank Beth Schumann. I want to thank Linda McMillan. I want to thank all of our partner organizations who you will hear from soon. This is a true collaboration to make sure that we got where we are today. I'll just say briefly in Spanish, esto es un día sumamente importante en la historia de los servicios humanos aquí dentro del condado de Montgomery. Estamos ofreciendo servicios para 300 familias y van a recibir $800 por mes por 24 meses. Y esto para muchas de nuestras familias va a ser la diferencia, poder pagar la renta, poder comprar comida para sus familias y para poder mover adelante como una familia entero. Esta iniciativa es importante y representa lo que tenemos que hacer moviendo adelante para apoyar a nuestras familias que nosotros sabemos tienen muchas necesidades. Thank you all so much and look forward to answering your questions at the end.
Thank you, Gabe. You mentioned the county executive who I introduced. I just want to say this has been a true partnership. You've got a ton of people here that have been a part of this for going on just about 2 years trying to figure this out. And I think this is the exact right time. And the county executive was right there. From the beginning, he said that he was partnered with us on this. If you'll notice, the special appropriation that we introduced just about an hour ago of just under $2 million will cover the first 7 months. But the county executive is committed when he sends his budget over in March that it will include the second year of the program. So that demonstrates that we're working together on this with the Department of Health and Human Services as well. So with that, I'd like to bring up County Executive Mark Ellis.
Thank you, Will. Thank you, Gideon. Thank you, Evan. I want to thank all the other folks who've been a part of this from the community side, and also thank my HHS staff that's been working on this diligently. This is something I really deeply believe in. As a council member, I used to look at some of the budgets that came over, and sometimes you'd see departments where we give out a lot of services. We actually spend more money giving out the service than we spend on the service that we're delivering. And I've always wondered what would happen if more of that money was available to frontline the people who actually receive the money than in the administration of programs. And this is one of those opportunities to see what happens when you actually put these dollars directly into the hands of people who are going to spend the money. A couple of years ago, I saw an article in the Washington Post, and they talked about mental health and poverty. And they talked about the consequences of depression for people who are struggling economically, and how they discovered that they can't make a good decision. You may know that you'd like to go to college, but if you can't fathom how you're going to pay the tuition or how you're going to work in order to pay the rent while you're going to college, pretty soon, even if you can see a way out, if you can't see a way to access that, then there is no good decision for you to make, because there's no good decision that's going to get you out of it. These kind of programs will help people lift themselves up, will help them make different decisions. And as a former school teacher, I've got to say, the consequences of this show up in our children. Poverty is not just an adult experience, it is a child experience. It's not just an economic experience, it's a social, emotional experience. You can't have basic needs met and you're hungry. And as a teacher, I've seen hungry children. If you're hungry, this has a profound effect on you. If you look around you in a world of coloring, glittering things, and everybody seems to have all these things you don't have, this impacts on your sense of self-worth. It impacts on how you see yourself and your family in the world, and it is depressing. And so having people affected by this in very profound ways is something we're trying to work our way out of. So I'm committed, as you said, to funding the next tranche of this money. I feel confident that, we've weathered the worst of the economics so far of COVID. We look to be in a strong place. We're not dependent on federal money. It looks like we'll not need another major tranche of federal money to get through the next year. So we're now free to make some decisions that we couldn't make a couple of years ago. COVID really tied our hands in every way it possibly could. It eliminated probably every great idea people wanted to do, got limited by the reality of COVID. We're coming out of that. It's time to use our imaginations again. It's time to get to a better place. And I'm happy to cooperate and work with the leadership on this council that wants to get this done. So thank you very much.
Thank you, County Executive Elridge. I want to bring up my seatmate when we're sitting on the dais, and a member of the Health and Human Services Committee, and our lead for homelessness, people experiencing homelessness and vulnerable populations, Councilmember Evan Glass.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Jawando. I appreciate your leadership, that of Vice President Albornoz, and also the county executive. I remember it was about 2.5 years ago that we had a conversation about doing basic income here in Montgomery County, and times changed. A pandemic occurred, but I am so glad that the three of them picked up the ball and continued rolling with it, because what we know over this last 1.5 years during the pandemic is the inequities that existed in our community not only got worse, but the Band-Aid was ripped off for everybody to see. No longer can we hide the needs that so many in our community face. Food insecurity, housing insecurity, economic insecurity. And not only are these plaguing families, but when we think about the achievement gap that exists in our schools, this program is going to help our young people. Because when a child goes to school with any of those insecurities, learning is one of the last things on their minds. Surviving is the utmost importance for them. So this program is not a handout. It is a hand up. And it is a continuation of the work that we are doing here in Montgomery County. 1 year ago, we as a county used federal funding to support those who were coming out of homelessness by providing individuals with $5,000 so they could restart their lives. And while we know that program has been successful, this program is going to make sure that it benefits those who still have a home, make sure they stay in their home, which is the safest place to be and the best place to help raise their family and better themselves. So I appreciate the work that my colleagues have done. I especially appreciate the work that our nonprofit social service providers have done, and look forward to hearing what they are going to do with this program. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Glass. And now it's my pleasure to bring up Julian Haynes from the Meyer Foundation, who made a historic investment. Let the truck pass, so I can say it again. The Meyer Foundation made a historic investment of $1 million commitment to this program. And they are a great family foundation that helps this community in the region on so many issues. But when I picked up the phone to call them and said, we want to do something big here in Montgomery County, they listened, they answered, and they are a core partner. We expect to work with other private sector entities to support this pilot throughout the 2 years, but they stepped up and they were first. And so I want to bring up Julian Haynes to talk about their commitment to this work.
County Executive Elrich, Councilmember Jawando, Councilmember Albornoz, other distinguished guests and partners. On behalf of the Meyer Foundation and our board of directors, it is an honor to be here today in support of this exciting effort. My name is Julian Haynes, and I'm the Maryland Partnerships and Strategies Director at the Meyer Foundation, where I lead the foundation's efforts in Montgomery County and Prince George's counties. The Meyer Foundation envisions a just, connected, and inclusive Greater Washington region in which systemic racism and its consequences no longer exist. We pursue and invest in solutions that build an equitable Greater Washington community in which economically disadvantaged people thrive. As our strategy to achieve this vision continues to deepen, Meyer's brand making seeks to partner with organizations and projects that build the power of communities to reimagine, recreate, and reform systems in the pursuit of racial and economic justice. It is precisely these reasons that we were immediately intrigued by the prospect of partnering with the county on this guaranteed income pilot and attracted to the huge potential this effort has to not only immediately provide much needed support to low-income Montgomery County families, but also begin building a broader case for economic justice throughout the county. We've learned from similar efforts locally and nationally that guaranteed basic income has the potential to, among other things, reduce income volatility, support attaining full-time employment, create greater housing stability, create improved health outcomes, create greater opportunities for self-determination. All of these outcomes not only benefit the guaranteed income pilot participants, but the broader communities in which they live. Reducing inequity, income volatility, and poverty will undoubtedly make Montgomery County stronger. This work cannot and should not be done alone. I'm so pleased to be working alongside county leadership and nonprofit partners like the Montgomery County Collaboration Council on this effort. To be sure, the collective power and influence of the public and private sectors are important for successfully launching and sustaining this effort. However, it will all be for naught if we don't, from the beginning, center the voices and lived experiences of county residents who are most disproportionately affected by economic injustice. The potential people power in this county is immense, and we at the Meyer Foundation, through this effort and others, seek to support an inclusive movement that galvanizes that power to re-envision and ultimately reshape how we think about and mitigate the effects of poverty. In closing, I want to thank County Executive Elrich, Council Members Joando and Albernaz again, and the Montgomery County Collaboration Council for their leadership and support. I look forward to the work ahead. Thank you.
Tag teaming the emceeing of this afternoon's event. So it now gives me great pleasure to introduce the director of our county's Department of Health and Human Services, Dr. Raymond Kroll. As we talked about extensively, the Department of Health and Human Services and their innovation and their flexibility and their tireless efforts to support our families over generations is really remarkable. And he had right away, it did not take very long to explain this program to Dr. Kroll and his team. And they have been working diligently over this last year and a half to not just support families, but think about how to change systems and how we address the needs of those families. So we're proud to be partnering with him, the county executive and his team. Without further ado, Dr. Raymond Kroll.
Good afternoon. I want to just tell you a little something. When I was young and had a lot of black hair, I made a decision to leave a job that was paying $40,000 a year to go take a job that was paying $11,000 a year so that I could go to graduate school. And that meant that I, by default, put myself in a state of very, very marginal income and capacity. It meant that I had to make choices about gas or lunch this week. Gas or lunch, how much of my phone bill do I pay this week? Can I keep it turned on? Do I pay my utilities or do I pay my full rent? Those were choices that I made, and I made them for two reasons. I was able to make them for two reasons. One, because I knew that it was for a greater good and that the long-term benefit was going to pay off. And secondarily, I had a support network. I had folks behind me. And if I got into trouble, I knew I could call them. I knew I had there are tens of thousands of people that didn't have that choice. But this is not a choice. Economic hardship and poverty is not a choice. It is a state of being. And every decision that they make carries consequences. Do I pay the rent? Do I skip the rent and buy food? Do I pay my utilities? Do I get my car repaired? And as long as things are going along, maybe I can manage. But if an accident happens, my car gets damaged, I have to change, my kid has a medical bill that isn't covered, I get plunged into a deeper state, into a spiral that is hard to recover from. We have a health and human service system in Montgomery County that I say is second to none, and I've worked in several of them, so I know something about health and human services. We have an incredible depth of resources. We do child care support for children. We do for families. We do food stamps and other kinds of Medicaid and Medicare benefits for families. We provide rental assistance to families. But we do that in a way that is very siloed and very managed. And if families have other needs that fall outside those bounds, maybe we don't help. Maybe we can't help. If they need something else and need to move the money around, they can't move that money around. They have no choice around that. If you make too much money, you lose some of those benefits and you get pushed off what we've come to refer to in the field as the cliff. So you can't get ahead because the moment you get ahead, you start losing ground. We have, you can't move money around. If you decide you want to get your car repaired, you don't have that. If you decide you want to get a training certificate, you may not have resources for that. We treat poverty in this country as a character flaw. We treat hardship, economic hardship, as a character flaw and as a lack of intelligence and capacity. It is none of that. It is about the lack of resources to make changes in your life and to manage your lives. 2 years ago, when I started as director, 2+ years ago when I started as director, this conversation about GBI first surfaced. I can't tell you how happy and how ready I was to do that process. COVID came along and put all that on the back burner for us. We got busy with other things. But it is great, and I am delighted to see that as we come out of this pandemic, and we are coming out of this pandemic, that we've beginning to look forward again at doing some things that will create opportunity and create changes in how we help and support families, that we give them funding and say, spend this the way you see it needs to be spent on whatever you see it needs to be spent on. Use it to take a class, use it to get your car repaired, use it to get a better car. Whatever that need is, it's your decision. I think we demonstrate in this model that we trust and have confidence that people who are in poverty can make smart decisions and do make smart decisions all the time about how they manage their resources. This gives them an extra opportunity to take the next step to make them give themselves a better and happier life, to come out of that anxiety and depression state that the county executive Elrich talked about, and maybe to get a better job and to have a better opportunity for themselves or for their families. I am incredibly proud today to stand here with the county council, with Meyer Foundation, with my peers and colleagues and partners in the community to launch this initiative and to say that we're going to figure out a better way to do this. This will help us reshape the policies and practices of this county and maybe for the state and maybe for the world in the years to come. So I'm delighted and honored to be here. Thank you all for taking the time to come.
Thank you. Our final speaker represents an organization that's one of my favorite in Montgomery County, the Collaboration Council for Children, Youth, and Families. I had the opportunity to serve as its board chair for several years. It's an interesting organization. Its board is made up of local government leaders, local community leaders, nonprofit leaders, but also business leaders. And they help facilitate and distribute the resources provided by the state to our children, youth, and family serving organizations in the county. But over the years, they've become much more than that. And under the direction of Elijah Wheeler, they have become even more than that. Elijah has done an absolutely outstanding job and was a longtime staff member of the collaboration before becoming its executive director. We're thrilled to be partnering with his initiative and look forward to hearing some words from him right now. Elijah Wheeler.
Thank you, Councilman Albernauz. Good afternoon, everyone. Great, the wind stopped blowing, so I'll try to get through this really quickly here. On behalf of the Montgomery County Collaboration Council, the county's local management board, I want to both applaud and thank council members Albernauz and Jawando for their leadership in shepherding this important work. To their co-sponsors on the bill, council members Glass, Hucker, Rice, and Reamer, for their backing, and the county executive for his stated support and investment in this initiative. Collaboration Council, we're committed to ensuring that the dignities of those we work with and on behalf of is at the forefront and center of everything that we do. This initiative is a testament and example of that as we continue to try to move families from survival to thriving and well-being. This privileged idea that income inequality will solve itself if we give people the tools to get hired, to get a job, is wrong-headed and outmoded. This is actually love and care in the form of policy. True dignity is realized not only when those who have the ability to take decisive action to help others who are in need do so, but when we recognize that those people deserve the basic human right to make choices about where to spend their resources, not when we are being overly prescriptive to the point of being controlling and limiting where and what they can do. Dignity can be found in choice and freedom fully realized in having options. As a result of this initiative, there will be fewer families worried about the impact of potential public school closures and how it will impair their child's ability to have access to fresh, hot meals during the school week. Because of this initiative, someone will now have the chance to choose to work just one job instead of multiple jobs that require that they leave in the dark of the early morning and miss seeing their child off to school, or be able to be home in the afternoon to greet them when they arrive back. People who have often had to make choices like this in this rich land should have to make no other options other than to choose to read and have the ability to be able to have freedom of options. This pilot will eliminate the turnstile experience of being in and out of poverty and deprivation for many accumulated effects that accompany that, both financially and emotionally. We should not tolerate poverty or judge or marginalize or shame those who experience it. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best ones. This initiative is both a simple solution and the best one that can be offered to those who need additional income in order to thrive. While certainly this is not, nor is it meant to be a panacea alone, coupled with other policy-based approaches, we can both envision and build a stronger social contract for the citizens and families and children of this county. Again, thank you to council members Albernauz and Jawando, County Executive Elrich, HHS Director Dr. Kroll, and our partners at Impact Silver Spring, the Meyer Foundation, and Julian Haynes. We're proud to support this administration of the pilot and help to engage the community in this groundbreaking effort. We're We're looking forward to having success, but more importantly, commitment to the children, youth, and families in Montgomery County.
Well done. Thank you. Thank you, Elijah. We'll take some questions. I just want to thank again Pam Luckett from my staff who worked on this tirelessly and probably I was very hard on her through the process. So thank you, Pam. You did great. Linda McMillan from our central staff, Beth Schumann from Councilmember Albernaz's staff, and then all of the folks behind us, in addition to our PIO team, which is great. Happy to take some questions. Bruce. Good.
How do you answer the critique from some conservatives that there are hundreds of small businesses in Montgomery County that are struggling to find people to work there, and that programs like this, they argue, are a disincentive to them it makes it harder for them to find workers?
Sure. Well, I respond to that in two ways. One, we have a wage problem, not a worker problem. You heard the last speaker talk about people who are making decisions like my mom did to work 2 or sometimes 3 low wage paying jobs and then still not be there to help with homework or having to get up early in the morning. To live in Montgomery County, you have to make a certain amount of money. And where wages are for entry level jobs, many of those don't provide enough. And so people want to work. We saw with the federal stimulus, we saw with the child tax credit. These are not disincentives. This is relieving the pressure so that people can get a living wage job. That's what I would say to folks that have that criticism. Yes, sir.
Have you decided on the metrics that will be used to determine who families are and possibly expanding it to more than 300 after your evaluation?
Yeah, I want to let anyone else that wants to comment please say so. But on that one, we have not decided the metrics. Except that we have decided that 100 of the 300 will be people who have experienced homelessness or in the continuum of care previously experienced homelessness. But we do want to find out things at different levels, different income, different parts of the county, different demographics, so that we can learn what the impacts are. And I want to let Gabe or maybe the county executive or the director of HHS talk about that as well.
So we have been working with partners of our team since the beginning, since several months now, to begin the process of how we frame this out. We'll be working over the next several months to refine the metrics, to refine the population. The outcomes of this depend on where they are, where people are, where they start. For some folks, it may be just a relief of anxiety and depression and a chance to take a certification course. For others, it may be an opportunity to get a new job or do to have some other successes in their lives that reduce their need for the kind of social support network that we offer in the county. So it will take a few months for us to pin that down and to nail down those outcomes and those deliveries. But we'll be meeting with our team and working through a process with our partners to refine that.
I would just add that one of the interesting byproducts of the last 2 years is that a lot of families have been accessing government services that hadn't been before. And so we have established more relationships with more families, not just through, we've had a no wrong door approach over the last 2 years, whether families entered through our nonprofit sector, through our county agencies, through our faith-based organizations. We've established a level of trust among a number of families that will help us identify those families on the front end who we know are absolutely in need, but also would benefit significantly from a pilot like this. So it's that kind of partnership and alliance and trust that we've built with the community that is going to make this pilot even more successful than it would have been on its own.
I just wanted to comment on that the previous question is, people don't have to worry about anybody living on $800 a month and not working. If they can't live on what they're making now and they're working, $800 is going to take away a job. All it does is replace the money that the owner probably should have been paying these people with money that we're going to pay people to make sure they can sustain themselves in this community. I've got 20,000 households who get no public assistance and no housing assistance, who are at 30% of area median income, around $32,000, spending 60% of their income on housing. These guys don't have to worry about folks finding jobs. They'll be there.
You're going to get a lot of people who want to know, how do I sign up?
Right.
People sign up for
Well-
this. We're watching.
Well, combining the your second question with that, and I want to, if Elijah, I maybe want Elijah to speak to this. We're going to have a community-led process over the next couple of months to help identify folks that are already in our networks that need access. There will not be a sign up. This is not a sign up. This will be, we will select people. You know, we have 1.1 million residents. You just heard how many are low income. So this is selecting based on who we know is in our system, and so that we can learn what we need to from people at different points in parts of the county, so that then after the 2 years, hopefully we can demonstrate a new way to provide assistance. So I want to let Elijah maybe talk about, do you want to? No, he does not want to. Okay. So we're going to have a community engaged process to select those folks, working with HHS, working with our community partners, but there's no sign up.
When do you visit the first checks actually going out?
First quarter of 2022. So I can't get any more specific than that, but it'll the first quarter of 2022. Yes.
Other jurisdictions have rolled out similar pilot programs, Arlington, Alexandria, cities, and California. What have you all been able to learn from those? What are some pros and cons, some takeaways that you all see through your research?
It's a great question. If anyone else wants to speak out, others probably want to answer this. You know, it's funny. The first program in the country was Stockton, California. Former Mayor Michael Tubbs, who was actually my intern in the White House. He's that young, and I'm kind of that old. But they saw in their program that you saw people who did not have full-time employment. At the end, you had almost a 20% increase of people who did gain full-time employment. You saw people use the money to further their education. You only saw 1% of the funds being used. We talked about freedom and dignity to choose what's right for you. Only 1% was used on alcohol or tobacco, things that, you know, we wouldn't necessarily want people to be using the money for. So you saw improved outcomes, and you've seen it in other parts of the country and the world too. And so I think there's really strong evidence. That's the oldest one where we have 2 years of kind of data where they've been able to look back. And they did $500 a month for 2 years for about 200 residents. Anyone else want to comment?
Yeah, the other byproduct of this is it solidifies the partnerships and alliances between our public and nonprofit sector, and which is already pretty strong, but the back end systems that have to be in place for families to be able to take full advantage of a program like this require relationships and building trust. And so it contributes to strengthening that social safety net. In addition to supporting the individual families that will benefit, it will also benefit the organizations that are supporting those families. And so it creates a better navigation system for those families too.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, thank you all for coming, and really appreciate you coming out and support. If you have individual questions, let us know. Yeah. Okay. We're going to take a picture. Come on, guys. Yeah. Everyone go. Yeah. We're outside. Yeah, we're outside. Look at that. All right.